The interrogation room was silent except for the steady hum of the air conditioner and the rhythmic beeping of a machine connected to the man sitting across the table. Detective Sarah Mitchell watched the screen as the technician removed the sensors from the suspect's fingers. "He passed," the technician said confidently. Every answer registered as truthful. Sarah didn't respond. Across from her, Daniel Carter smiled politely. He looked like the kind of man neighbors trusted to water their plants while they were on vacation. 35 years old. Neatly combed brown hair. Clean-shaven. Calm blue eyes. A respected high school history teacher. Volunteer at the local shelter. No criminal record. And yet 3 people had disappeared after being seen with him. There was no evidence. No witnesses. No confession. And now, not even a failed lie detector. Daniel stood and straightened his jacket. "So, am I free to go?" Sarah nodded slowly. "For now." He smiled again, almost kindly. "I hope you find whoever you're looking for, detective." As he walked out, everyone in the room relaxed. Everyone except Sarah. Something about him made every instinct she had scream that he was dangerous. Her partner, Mike, sighed. "You've got to let this one go, Sarah. The polygraph doesn't show a single sign of deception." "I know. Then why do you keep looking at him like that?" She stared through the window as Daniel calmly walked into the parking lot. "Because psychopaths don't always lie." Mike frowned. "What do you mean?" "They believe their own stories." Over the next week, Sarah quietly followed Daniel. She never found anything illegal. He taught classes. Bought groceries. Helped an elderly neighbor carry heavy boxes. Volunteered every Saturday at the community kitchen. Everyone loved him. The volunteers described him as patient. Students called him inspiring. Even homeless people greeted him warmly. Sarah began questioning herself. Maybe she had become obsessed, maybe she was wrong. Then everything changed. One rainy evening she stopped by the community kitchen where Daniel volunteered. The place was crowded. A frightened teenage boy accidentally dropped an entire tray of soup onto Daniel's expensive coat. Everyone froze. The boy looked terrified. "I'm so sorry, sir." Daniel smiled warmly. "It's okay." He even helped clean the mess. People admired his patience. Sarah noticed something no one else did. For just half a second, his eyes became completely empty. Not angry. Not embarrassed. Simply, empty. As though the smile belonged to someone else. Then it returned. It lasted less than a heartbeat. But Sarah saw it. Later that night she couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning she visited the homeless shelter where Daniel volunteered. She spoke with an elderly man named Walter. Walter smiled when Daniel's name came up. "Oh, he's one of the kindest people I've ever met." Sarah nodded. "Has he ever lost his temper?" Walter thought for a moment. "No." "Ever seemed upset?" "No." "Ever made a mistake?" Walter laughed. "Nobody's perfect." Sarah leaned closer. "But Daniel?" Walter became quiet. "You know, now that you mention it, I can't remember him ever making a mistake." That bothered her. Real people made mistakes. Real kindness wasn't perfect. Days later another person disappeared. A young woman named Emily. Security cameras showed her entering a bookstore. Daniel happened to be inside. He claimed they never spoke. Again. The lie detector confirmed he was truthful. The investigation stalled. Everyone wanted to close the case. Everyone except Sarah. One afternoon she sat alone in a small cafe reviewing hours of surveillance footage. A waitress noticed the stack of files. "Tough case?" Sarah smiled tiredly. "You could say that." The waitress placed a fresh cup of coffee beside her. "No charge." Sarah looked surprised. "I didn't order this." "You looked like you needed it." Such a small act of kindness. Yet it reminded Sarah of something. Kindness wasn't about looking perfect. It was about noticing people. Daniel noticed everyone. But only when someone was watching. She reviewed hundreds of videos again. There it was. Whenever he believed no one could see him, his face became emotionless. Like a switch turning off. The smiles only appeared when another person entered his view. It wasn't proof. But it was a pattern. Sarah dug deeper. She searched through old missing person reports from neighboring counties. A name caught her attention. 10 years earlier, another detective had investigated Daniel after 2 hikers vanished. No evidence. Case closed. She called the retired detective. His voice sounded old but certain. "I knew it was him." "You had evidence?" "No." "Then why?" There was a long pause. "Because when he shook my hand, he smiled with his mouth but not his eyes." Sarah felt chills. She wasn't imagining it. Still. Instinct wasn't enough. Weeks later, everything changed. Daniel was driving home when a little girl suddenly ran into the street chasing her puppy. Sarah happened to be following him from a distance. Daniel slammed on the brakes. The car stopped inches away. The frightened child burst into tears. Daniel stepped out. Sarah instinctively reached for her weapon, expecting the worst. Instead, Daniel slowly knelt. He picked up the shaking puppy. "It's okay," he whispered gently. He handed it back to the little girl. She hugged the dog tightly. "Thank you." Daniel simply nodded. The child's mother rushed over, crying as she embraced her daughter. She thanked Daniel repeatedly. He quietly returned to his car and drove away. Sarah stayed frozen. That moment hadn't been planned. No cameras. No audience. No reason to pretend. For the first time, she saw genuine compassion. Later she obtained traffic camera footage from another angle. Daniel had actually swerved his own car toward a concrete barrier to avoid hitting the little girl. His vehicle suffered thousands of dollars in damage. He never filed an insurance claim. Never told anyone. Never even mentioned it. Sarah finally understood. She had spent months believing every unusual behavior proved he was evil. She had ignored every piece of evidence that didn't fit her theory. Her instincts had become prejudice. She requested one final meeting with Daniel. He arrived calmly. "I suppose you found something." She looked him in the eyes. "I found that I was wrong." Daniel remained silent. Sarah continued. "I judged you because you didn't express emotions the way most people do." He looked down. "I've heard that my whole life." He hesitated before speaking again. "When I was a child, doctors told my parents I had an emotional processing disorder. I don't show feelings naturally. I learned facial expressions by watching other people." Sarah listened quietly. "I know my smile feels rehearsed," Daniel admitted. "Because it is. But helping people isn't an act. I choose kindness every day, even when it doesn't come naturally." Sarah realized something profound. Kindness isn't measured by how warm someone appears. It's measured by the choices they make. She extended her hand. "I'm sorry." Daniel shook it gently. "So am I." "For what?" "That you had to carry so much suspicion alone." Sarah smiled. This time, his eyes smiled too. Months later, police finally arrested the real kidnapper. A drifter connected to several unsolved disappearances across 3 states. DNA evidence proved Daniel had never been involved. Sarah never forgot the lesson. Sometimes evil hides behind charming smiles. But sometimes goodness hides behind awkward ones. The heart cannot always be measured by expressions, machines, or first impressions. Real kindness is found not in perfect emotions, but in imperfect people who choose to do the right thing, even when no one is watching.